Yeah. All right. Good evening, everyone. Thanks again. We aren't as many as I thought we would be, but you can't complain at the location, can you? It's pretty good. Even though we're supposedly a survey kind of charity, I'm sure people have lost and have been able to find their way here. But I think it's a good crowd. It's a nice crowd. We've got a great setup tonight. I'm really pleased with how this all came together, and I think it's always nice to try somewhere new. So I appreciate everyone taking their time to come down and see and hear, eat the food and drink the wine as well, which is apparently, you're pleased to hear, free now. So just crack on and crack in. But I think everyone's busy in this industry except the students, who will be in a few years' time. So even people coming down, and maybe those that are hopefully looking online, they'll be able to appreciate what you're talking about. But it is difficult to set aside time for stuff like this, but it's always good to see people, and especially as we are here. So just a quick, I'm going to say a few words, go through a few slides. Then I've got the gentleman who pretty much is running the evening with the food. He's going to say a little bit, and then we've got 5 minutes of a little bit of history of this location, which is dates back 300 odd years, probably further. So Lena's going to say something on that front. So just going to give you a few more slides. These, I must say, amongst us, we have some of the companies are on this screen. We've got a staggering up from 20 last year. We're now 30 sponsors. We're going to definitely push those sponsors a little bit more than we probably have done in the past. But we're always appreciative of, amongst others, Go Subsea, Fugro and UTEC for giving us and sponsoring NOSP, because without them we couldn't do this. We couldn't all enjoy an annual dinner down in Stavanger either, which is not to be missed. You guys will get to enjoy that at some point in the future, but not this year. But so yeah, it's just again a big thank you to the sponsors. I think this is more directed at the people at home. I'm hoping there are people at home. We had last January 100 people when it was COVID was at probably its height, and everyone was bored out of their minds at home. So everyone was logging onto these events. Since COVID has kind of lost its appeal, it's been a little bit quieter online, but I hope there are some people at home and they can ask some questions on the Discord. That's mostly for them. They can go to their website and find that address and ask some questions to you guys who are going to present, and hopefully get some interesting questions. As ever, it's always I wouldn't say a struggle, but it's always challenging to kind of put together some interesting, or find people who want to present. So, you guys in the few years, once you're in this industry, hopefully you are in this industry, come up with some, you want to talk about things. It's always good to hear what students have got to say about how their challenges are and what they want to talk about, not just industry related. Now, I think it's very clear that we're quite an aging industry. All the same names are going around now, so having new people and new blood in is really important. So, but anyone who wants to say something, regardless of what subject, if it's got even a hint of survey in it, we'll take it. So, just don't hesitate in coming forward and providing us with opportunities to speak about. Wanted to say a little bit about what we've got planned the rest of the year. There is another of these meetings in about a month and a bit time down in Stavanger, so maybe we'll get a good. The last one down in Stavanger was very well received. I wasn't there for that one, but we're going to have a bit of a cleanup, just a collection of just miscellaneous presentations. So no particular theme. This evening, of course, has a theme to a degree, and then in Okramna we'll be down there with RTS. And that's always a very good evening. And it's even the whole day. We're normally about 90 to 100 people down there. So very, very interesting event, that one. Then we'll be back in Bergen before we all head down to Stavanger again to get royally pissed. So I think it's going to line up for a good year. And hopefully next year we've got a few more. Ooh. No. Right, okay. So a little bit about this evening. Got a great lineup. Martin Berry from Subsea 7. We've got Greg from UTEC. Kim and the guys from Terratech are going to be joining online. So that's going to be that's why we've got this little setup here, and we have tested it. Hopefully it goes well. And then of course we've got the end Jan Arvid, who I've kind of made out to be some sort of special presentation, but that wasn't intentional, just the way it happened. But so yeah, the theme is data management. Kind of, I think, just from my daily experiences, all the time it's just more and more data coming in, and how do you manage all that? So I hope that these people can tell us a little bit about how they're kind of managing that challenge. So on that note, I won't hand you over to Martin just yet. I'm going to hand you over to the guys here. There's two of them, and they can say a little bit about this wonderful location. So just excuse me now. Okay. Yeah. Well, we're paying for the location, so we might as well get a little bit of. Well, you're not going to talk about that, are you? You're just going to talk about the food and drink, but you know, let's go for it. This is Eric.
I'm going to stick with that.
Yeah.
Hello. I'm just going to do the boring stuff. Emergency exits will be down there, or in there and where you came in. Toilets. We're going to have another party here, so when you're using the toilet, you have to go downstairs here, out to the left, and you will be at the front entry again, and you're going to use the toilets in there. If there are people who smoke there, you have to go to outside the wall that goes around, because there's not allowed to smoke inside the walls of the museum. For food, you have some cured meats. You have guanciale, which is the cured pig's cheek. You have coppa, which is the cured pig's neck. And you have some spicy chorizo and sourdough bread and some olives. For drinks, we have red wine, Beaujolais, a Gamay from France, and a Chardonnay also from France. And we have some Norwegian beer from Bergen, and some sodas and an apple juice of some sort. So you just help yourself with that. Have a lovely time, and now the people that knows about the place is going to tell you more about that.
Thank you very much, Eric. Right, that's very good. That's not going to make, if there is anybody at home, that's not going to make a blind bit of, it's not going to make any sense to them, but that's okay. It's all good. I think this place is amazing. I think it's got a lot of atmosphere, and I hope we'll come back here. So, as I mentioned, the food is on us, the drinks are on us, so just enjoy yourselves. I'm going to bring in Lena now and get her to stand here, actually, and not there. So, Lena, go. So, this is Lena, and she'll talk a little bit about the history. If you could just stand here.
Yeah.
So the millions of people at home can see you. Just stand back a bit. Thanks.
Okay. Good evening, and very hearty welcome to Schatztürme, which is our beloved museum. And to give you a short introduction for you to understand where we're at now. But you can also visit us each weekday to learn more, of course. So Schatztürme was opened in the 1930s already. And the head of the museum was, for a long time, Christian Koren-Wiberg. And he actually was an artist before, so when you go downstairs to the toilet, you will see some of his hard work on the walls. And he was the son of Johan Olsen, who opened the Hanseatic Museum, which is a part of our museum too. And he, as his father, had the vision that he wanted to keep the Hanseatic legacy in Bergen and to show it to all the people that want to see it. So Schatztürme is Schatztürme is a museum which shows where the Hanseatic merchants came and met each other. This is an assembly room, and Schatztürme also has a cookhouse. So at the cookhouse, they made the food, and the apprentices made the food, and then they came here to eat dinner together, to have assemblies to decide who needs to buy the beer next month and who needs to buy the firewood, because it got quite cold in the winter. And so Schatztürme is quite a sharing place, because it was those complexes were located at the end of each tenement, and all of those houses that were in front shared one of the Schatztürme. So it was, and that was actually a Norwegian concept. So in this way, the Norwegians, gave an influence on the Hanseatics, which came from Germany, and also hugely influenced Norway and Bergen. And so at this room here, you can see the stove, and this is an example for fire, for the rules that the Hanseatic merchants had around fire, because they were really afraid of all those wooden houses burning down, because it would mean that they had a huge economic losses. So they said that it was only allowed to have fire at Skötstuna and open flames. So it was the only place where you had light and warmth. All the other places during the winter were cold and dark and probably really wet. So a lot of the times in the winter, people gathered here to warm up and to maybe read something or play games with each other. And so today we want to show how the Hanseatic merchants lived in Bergen, and how we still can keep the history inside of those buildings and give it a little further to people who want to visit us, and spread it all around the world. So welcome again, and have a nice meal. And
Thank you. How old is this room, by the way?
This room is from 1760s, I think. So, and this is one of the original rooms. We also have some reconstructions and copies. But this room
is almost original. This one.
Yeah. So this room was moved from Bryggen here.
Okay.
They disassembled it, all the wooden parts here, and then and assembled it back again. So it was really adventurous how they managed to build this complex here.
Very good.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions for any before we crack on? Thank you very much for your time, Nina. Much appreciated. Yeah.
Have a nice evening.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Without any final ado, we'll crack on then. So Martin Berry is joining us from Subsea 7. I put this presentation at the start because I thought it set the scene nicely for what we were going to be talking about tonight, data and all its facets. So I'm very keen to hear what Martin has to say, and he looks the part as well. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Stuart, and thank you for the invitation to present. Yeah, good evening, folks. I'll just wait for the presentation to be teed up. But maybe
it's worth noting that we're not particularly slick yet about how we manage this online as well. So this young man has got the responsibility to write a procedure, because we all just love procedures.
Don't we indeed? Thank you. Yeah, a bit of background about myself first. I started off in the industry quite a while back, 1983, actually here in Norway for Geoteam. Geoteam Norway, and laterally there was the operation in Aberdeen. We were primarily a sort of geophysical site survey company with shallow seismic. I moved on into the sort of telecoms cable survey industry. Worked for SSI in Seattle, ISM in Paris, Wimpole was down in Swindon, and then eventually we were onboarded with Fugro, where I ran the data center there for a number of years, servicing sort of 3 different service lines: positioning, construction, and the geophysical as well. More recently, I've joined Subsea 7, where my department really looks after the processing of the SURF and inspection data. We have a data solutions function that's looking at some incremental, quick wins from a software perspective. And more importantly, is responsible for the aforementioned data on a global footprint. So yeah, you can imagine our offices are pretty widespread. So without further ado, data, an emerging virtual currency, I think would be a fair comment. There's a lot of value in data, and if it's squirreled away and hidden, it's not really any use to anyone. So what we'll do is have a quick look at the background, the history, data's journey, what we're doing to sort of transition at the moment, our operations, our workflows, our client requirements, our demands, and really look to add some value to that, so we can mine and apply other solutions to that data sets and make use of it moving forward. Probably worthwhile we'll kind of go through it quite quickly, but yeah, everything was paper driven. I mean, that's maybe a bit of an embellishment, but yeah, it some cases it wasn't far wrong. Our industry, back early 90s was still sort of paper driven. Although in the top right hand corner you see which I guess is PDP 11 stuff. It's digital spreads. It's been recorded digitally, obviously, but on tape. But the output was all paper driven. The seismic sections, the high gain, the low gain, and people just worked on the paper data. Really, I'm sure my age, I guess. And then the bottom left hand was a sort of sonar, SciScan sonar, sort of data set that again has been printed out on thermal paper. I can almost smell it. And the geophysicists would scale off and transfer all that onto a piece of mylar or a piece of film. Everything was hand drawn. It was copied, and I mean, it wasn't printed because there were no printers. There was one of those archaic machines that just ran off multiple copies. Essentially, one way or the other, even the Word documents, the reports, the field information, tide curves, velocity profiles, all that good stuff used to end up in a bound up folder and then dispatched to the client. I dug this out. This I thought was a great representation of what actually happened. No plotters around. They didn't emerge until a few years later, into the sort of 90s. We would deliver after we've reproduced the data, and it was pretty slow. And we've got to bear in mind that some of this stuff was being delivered transatlantic. So the cable route survey, you're going from the UK to the States into the shallower water. There's hundreds of charts. So what you'd have to do is really start your print runs weeks, sometimes in advance, to get all the deliverables prepared and groomed. And invariably you'd run out of time, and it would have to be hand carried across to the client. Because if it wasn't, it would be held up further in customs, or couriers would sit with it for prolonged periods. So it was a bit of a kind of snakes and ladders approach. The proof to final revisioning was very painful because it was just a cyclical process and very labour intensive. Markups and originals were the norm, back to sort of hand copies. Although redlining started to emerge, both within a charting environment and with document management, I suppose. Adobe also, it wasn't really adopted by our industry for some reason, and still to this day, we rely a lot on a PDF of a chart, and we'll talk about that in a bit more detail moving forward. That was the SSDs of their day, I suppose. Lots of projects over the years ended up in multiple instances of these things. Data, one way or the other, ended up in there. Quite long lead times to recover it. Was it secure? It's secure until something happens to it, I guess. I can take my word for it. We didn't duplicate and have multiple sites of things like, cores, or would anybody want that data? I don't know, not for me to say, but it was a bit risky. Postal tubes, thousands. And, it came at the expense of real estate. You needed to use up expensive office space to store all this stuff, or you put it off-site. It was quite costly. It wasn't all bad news though. We don't have the digital demand now for digital storage space in our servers, etc. And as I said previously, most of this stuff was put out to contractors, but it did impact our lead time significantly. So getting data in to start processing, to start the reporting process, could take as long as it took, to be honest, and you were at the mercy of customs agents. If you're working in West Africa and you're reporting in the UK, it's a week, at best, to get stuff back. And the same in the lead out, as I mentioned before. You have to start well before the milestone to start producing the deliverables. And it's just as rinse and repeat, because when you go through the cyclical reporting process. You go to proof copy and then to final. You just repeat this, albeit the actual lead time shortens in its own right. Other industries, I thought I'd pitch this in. We weren't alone. They faced similar issues. Music collections, they were scattered to the four winds. You needed dedicated devices to play them. But things got better for them when this thing emerged, But it didn't come on its own. And I think there's massive similarities to what we picked up in the oil and gas industry, certainly the survey industry in particular, because it's all about cataloging the data. So when iTunes came along, it revolutionized how we deal with that data and how we access it. But what became very, very important, and something we'll focus on shortly, is the metadata. That it was pretty useless if you didn't capture the metadata, because we've all done it, I assume, in iTunes. You couldn't find what you were looking for, genres, etc. So if the data wasn't available, you had to input that data, and sometimes it came with the file itself. So what's changed over the years? You'll have to bear with me, because I guess I do go back quite a while, but when we had single beam, we moved to multi-beam. Speaks for itself. The resolution increased, has a greater burden on the data that comes off, more disk space, etc. Faster PCs, more disk space in the PC. I mean, it's all relative, isn't it? And I used to think the software companies were in cahoots with Intel and whatnot, because once upon a time, we took out an old 486 or whatever it was PC, and we used an old version of GIS. It went like a train, but it wouldn't run the latest version, which did very little, to be quite honest, in comparison to the initial versions. Anyway, that was just my hunch. Of course, it didn't stay there, did it? We record water column data, backscatter data, high SAS, the aperture sonars. If we then look at SLAM data that's coming in from the LiDAR side as well, it starts to mount up. And generally speaking, there was a trend that everything moved from manually drawn charts, physical storage, to digital interpretation. The manual techniques were replaced by CAD and GIS systems, and the digital storage then was around to really harness and capture all that data. So the challenges, I'll not dwell on them, but if we have a quick look through them. Briefly, data growth, our data is growing because of technology, etc. Data volumes are increasing due to company expansions. We're doing more. We're getting involved in other sides of the industry. Now renewables, of course. So, that's supplemented what we need as far as space is concerned. Data quality is very, very important. Security, data duplication. We don't want multiple instances unnecessarily of data, and certainly our workflows. If we look at analysis, this is what we need to do with the data. It's pretty, worthless in its own right in a raw state. It has to be structured. Back to the sort of iTunes, you've got to put that metadata in there if you certainly want to use it downstream. And really trying to, when I say robotics, use like RPA or robotic process automation to try and streamline a lot of what's done manually, because up the top there, resource is quite considerable. I mean, you need some pretty specialized people to manage data, certainly for a company like Subsea 7 on behalf of our clients. So if you can reduce that level of effort, that manual intervention, it helps enormously. So more specifically, challenges. The IDC tell us that our data grows at a rate of 50% a year. Don't know where that comes from, but I'll take it as read. Standard workflows compound the problem, so we duplicate data many times, so we need to look at our workflows continuously and refine these workflows to make sure we're pushing things in the right direction. We're not over copying data, we're not over backing up data, for example. We have copies at source. I say vessel, but it can be anywhere. We have conventional hard drops, typically come off as USB drives, as blades, whatever. Recently now we have an electronic delivery coming through the cloud we'll touch on in a short while. If that's not enough, There's revisioning of all of the aforementioned, and where do you stop? And backups, yeah. So you're backing up the revisions, remember. And we've got to keep this data for lengthy periods. If you look at the T's and C's and contracts, it can be anything from that's not stipulated, so you tend to keep it anyway, just in case, and that's quite dangerous. 5 years, 10 years. But what do you do with it afterwards? I mean, not for me to say, but the survey companies, I suppose, amongst us, we're in the business of acquiring data. And I know the data lake, analogies and what we can do with data, using shallow seismic data for site survey purposes, that type of thing. But, we're in the business of getting rid of it, in my opinion, but that is only my opinion. If it's 10 years old and we don't need to keep it, then do you destroy it? And that's a question more than a statement. There's the results, the deliverables, the reports that then spawn from that source data. So you can see this exponential curve that just goes up and up and up. It's the CAD charts, it's a video review, it's the GISs, etc. And this is where, I think we start looking at perhaps digital twins. And I know there's a presentation to follow on digital twins specifically, so I'll not dwell on it. But I think distilling down some of these deliverables and really looking at the value or the values of the data itself and really pushing that through a digital twin can help enormously. But it has to start chopping out some things at the other end. We can't be getting digital twins and GISs and CAD charts and listings and IBIS files or COABIS files. Surely, we've got to start pruning it back. Challenges, and there's plenty. You need a strategy, you need a plan. So when you realise that there's an upward curve in our data storage requirements, how do we go about that? So we need a roadmap to ensure consistency. Data quality, that speaks for itself, but look beyond the data, the metadata. You've got to start recording that, or you've got to start scraping that data as soon as possible. Certainly, if you're going to be basing, your decisions, company decisions, strategies based on some of this data, and some of it's not survey data, appreciated. And the old adage, it's rubbish in, rubbish out. So you've got to be very focused on the quality, and really that requires ongoing QA, QC at source, and have visibility to the sensors as the data is coming off. So if you have solutions that can critique the data, that can quality control. Online systems are starting to do this. You're avoiding, dare I say it, the requirement to go and reshoot a line or reacquire the data, because again, it just multiplies. You need access to data. It's a collaborative environment we're in now. Certainly for Subsea 7, we're working on large infrastructures with many other companies working alongside us and the client. We need to share that data. What we started off talking about earlier on is just not practical. So we've got to look at ways of digitally disseminating this data. And clouds and that we'll touch on is going to help us along that way. But you're going to make sure you're not duplicating it unnecessarily, in the same breath. Volumes, you need a scalable solution, not something that you just keep chucking capex at and buying more servers. It needs to scale up and scale down accordingly, should the demand dictate. And cleanse data, don't drown in it. We've got to make sure that the data is fit for purpose. And you need to have a look ahead. Watch out for the pitfalls and evolve. It's not static. It's a constant requirement to look down that road and see how we address some of these challenges. And who pays for this? Difficult one. Is it reduced operating costs? Is that how we look at it, or do we put lots of capexes in to pay for this hardware, etc. And the resource. Data motion, this is big up on my radar. Certainly, is minimizing, the actual transmission of the data, how long it takes to get from A to B. Should it go from A to B in that order? And I'm a bit of a sort of lean practitioner. So if you look at the 8 wastes of lean management, it ticks a few boxes. So transportation, it's unnecessary movement of data, potentially. We have waiting, so there's wasted time. Well, upstream processing, so you might have someone waiting for data that can't get on with the job because it's stuck somewhere. Inventory, excess products, giving too much away, and overproduction. And if we go back to the previous slide, this is absolutely part of the issue with the lead in and lead out times, and that's really what you've got to address on a sort of lean basis, an FMEA, this failure modes and effects analysis, drill down and find out where the pinch points are, and then start to get digital solutions in to solve that problems, or indeed just remove them. And data access, everyone, I'm sure, has suffered from this. No sooner have you freed up some disk space and someone wants it back again. I don't know if someone watches over your shoulder, but it's just life, isn't it? And it ticks yet another lean box. It's over processing. So we're doing more work than ordinarily we need to. We've got better things to do all day than back up data to tapes and then go and get that tape back in the tape drive and recover it all again. So what will we do? We'll just leave it where it is. Well, you can't do that either because you're out of space. So it's a vicious circle. So the long-standing way of addressing this is, from server to LTO tape to NAS units, it just spins round. And the solution is, of course, to just duplicate, just spin it out, just buy more expensive hardware. But it's not elastic enough. You can't reduce that. Should there be a downturn in actual requirement. And I was told by some of the storage companies, Iron Mountain, that LTOs, believe it or not, are starting to fail now. They don't have, they're like DVDs and things, they don't have an unlimited shelf life. And a lot of it's to do with, I don't know, this is clever marketing, maybe it is. But if they look after it in a sort of clean environment, air-conditioned environment, they may last for twice as long indefinitely. But typically, if they're not in a controlled environment, 6-7 years, you put a tape in and you can't recover the data. So that's terribly worrying. Typical hardware footprints. Just threw this up. You normally have 2 drives, one backs on to the other one, so it gives you quick access should there be an issue. There's lots of tape drives in the background, attached disks, and there'll be virtual machines spinning around in there somewhere, running databases, SQL servers, that type of thing. So phenomenal footprint. And if you've got this going on in various locations around the globe, you can understand what I meant earlier about the resource requirement. It is massive. And the data, cleansing data. If you want to look at master data, you can then share with other systems, so the SAP systems, share it with commercial, etc. You have to have a control in place because you get the oil companies, it's Shell Exploration UK, and in a GIS or a database environment, you can't meaningfully work with that data because it has to be consistent. So we need to start, focusing on the actual master data side of things. And if you want to start, sharing that data within a company, not strictly just within our own disciplines within survey, you may want to put it into ProArch or it comes from SAP or it's AutoCAD, it's IVA even. It's all got to match. So I hope that makes sense. So what's the solution? Something like this, I guess. This is now happening in practice, quite broadly, I believe, within our industry. So we'll not dwell on this slide in particular for too long, but really we're not hand carrying things back. Well, certainly not in order to start our reporting processes. Data is coming through VSAT or LTE. If you're doing nearshore work, we've done some work in Norway previously where we've used 4G. Because we were close, we did some fjord crossings, great, it just goes in very, very quickly, and you're behind the vessel, can start QCing the data and can start with the processing very early on. I guess this is how it looks a bit more in reality. If you look at the big picture, we need to transmit big data across on-prem and multi-cloud environments. We need to seamlessly access this data and share the data within the collaborative projects I mentioned before, so all the other people that might be involved from an engineering perspective or from a site survey perspective. You can imagine, what would happen, the logistical exercise, disks and tapes, things all flying around. Where do you put them? Who coordinates it? So I think cloud is a savior as far as that's concerned. And up in the top right, you've got the end users, the stakeholders. This is roughly what it looks like in practice. You don't have to be offshore. You've got stuff going on in yards, laser scanning, DIMCON work. It's raw data. You do something to it. You take out the bits you don't need. I think Naviscan, using IVA, is really good because the data is economic anyway. But if you're dealing with raw multi-beam data, S7K data, or the all files, it's horrendous. You don't need half the stuff that's transferring through VSAT, so you start stripping out the datagrams that you don't need. Once you have your revised data, you compress it, decompress it when it gets to the other end. It's transmitted in flight with some cheeky software. You revise the data and you start reporting and delivering. So it seems simple, doesn't it? So what are we talking about specifically? Data sizes. Well, you can see for yourself, on a daily basis for one pipeline inspection, we're talking about 7.5, 7 gigabytes. If we didn't tweak it, you're talking about 70. Yeah. So that cheeky, sort of packaging aspect of what we do is essential, or you'd never get it through VSAT. But if that's all we had to deal with, it would be great, wouldn't it? So we're not just doing, RM type work. Point cloud data coming in from some of the renewables operations, like doing inclination calculations, that type of thing. Terabyte of data, easily. Laser scanning from the DIMCON yards for structures. Nightly structures, it's another half terabyte of data. A surf project, 4 to 14 terabytes. IRM, not quite as bad, typically 7 terabytes. And FDI and all other good stuff that's starting to emerge. 2 petabytes, maybe that's conservative, but it's certainly increasing. Can you imagine that 10 years ago? So we need a solution that reduces the data motion, minimizes data duplication. We need to sort of pool data rather than push it. So don't give it to someone who doesn't need it. Let them harvest that data when they actually require it, and as soon as possible. We need to have mechanisms and software that will accelerate that actual data delivery. I'll not dwell on it, but there's lots of solutions out on the market. IBM, we're a fairly big player in that game, which eliminates TCP. So TCP is quite lossy. When it detects packet collisions, it really ramps back the throughput, and it never really regains, where it left off. So UDP and other solutions are deployed. It's all proprietary, but if you build that into your solution, it guarantees you can get data coming back very quickly, and it's not so vulnerable to latencies either. It's all black box stuff, but you just buy it in, and it can be 10 times faster than using a conventional FTP type approach. And it has to be secure, of course. So you've got to go to the highest possible encryption levels, without a doubt. Users all collaborate. On-prem storage really synchronizes with cloud storage. And this is it, I guess, in a pretty good schematic. You have your on-prem storage, the cloud storage. You get rid of these things. So it goes from the cloud straight across. And at some point, I think we need to get cloud compute. And that's happening as well now. So if you're moving it from the vessel, from the beach, from the yard to the cloud, down to the office, and then you're going to archive it back in the cloud, why not just leave it there and do the compute? And the companies themselves, they move it from cold storage into, hot areas where you can actually access the data. They charge you different amounts depending on where the data is hosted, but it's a bit like Google Mail. They just tag it. So they're not physically moving things around. and you pay, you know, a premium if you want it back quickly to expedite the data. But it's definitely the solution. And if you remember the other slide, basically that's what replaces it. You've just got a synchronization going on with the cloud. It's backing up your data. There's no LTOs anymore. It's all been taken care of by Amazon or Azure or whoever your choice is. And looking to share the data, GIS, yeah, we all know about that. Used for planning. And we can use it internally as well for helping to execute our projects, I beg your pardon. You know, wind farms, the engineers are using it, and you can allow your clients to share with that data very early on. Digital twins, without a doubt, as I said before, I think that will replace a lot of what we deliver historically. I certainly hope it will eliminate some of it. And we also have internal solutions. We have a 7Media solution that takes some of our IRM data and pushes it into the cloud and allows you to analyze the data and you know, interact with the client. And you know, we're not unique in this, I'm quite sure. So adding value. Data is extremely valuable, but you have to catalog and index it properly to benefit the business moving forward. You want to do compare analysis before and afters, do predictions for maybe sand wave movement, all that kind of stuff. And you start using the data from a historic sort of catalogue. But again, I keep repeating myself, you've got to put that metadata in first. Scrape the data, yep, you've got to, almost as it's coming off the centres, capture that information you need. Various tools again in the workplace. There's DDF, which is a distributed data framework. It was an open source solution that Lockheed Martin gifted to the industry. You can have it running in the background in the cloud. It's scraping the metadata from your data and pushing it into the database that you can then harvest at a later date. And you know, you might want to look at things like, you know, the geodesy, the SVP side of things, laybacks, offsets, tides, all that stuff. It will be somewhere, don't get me wrong, but you need that attached to the data. Adding value, data governance, yeah, that's the answer. What we need is a constant focus and a measured sort of environment that we can start aligning with our company strategies. And what data governance isn't, it's nothing to do with data security, data retention, or any data protection. It's all about adding value to your data. And a data governance sort of model looks similar to this. It's people, policy, processes, and tools. But I think the data glossary is really important. And what distinguishes a data glossary from a sort of data dictionary is it's about your company strategy. It's about the data owners, you know, who the data stewards are, and where the value is. And you've got to have that mapped out. And pretty much that's how it works in practice. You know, improved business processes, it improves accuracy, and it really controls the standard quality and the master data, as I mentioned. So that was better luck than good management. That's bang on half an hour.
Don't worry, I think the schedule's shocked anyway tonight, so I think we'll just disregard that. I think
I'm here all night
at the start anyway. But thank you very much. It was really interesting. I have a couple of questions, but can you explain? I don't know whether this is pertinent to this or your presentation.
Yeah.
But the digital twins. I see this term now being bandied around, and I'm sure it will be second nature to us all in a couple of years' time. But can you explain what a digital twin is?
Yeah, it's a single source of truth, I guess, from the data perspective. It's really a digital rendition of what's happening somewhere else, you know, from a sensor or something that's being monitored, and it's really harvesting that data, and in real time it's projecting those results. So it's mirroring what's going on in a remote location.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions here at all for Martin? Crystal clear. I thought it was very interesting because you captured data, floppy disks as it was. at the start when I started. That's
Yeah.
sad to admit. But with the cost of all this as well, you know, someone's got to look after it. I know that we do it in DOF with Azure. There's various solutions. That cost is that something that is where? How do you manage that cost? I suppose who kind of ends up with it, project department or client or whatever? What's that?
It's a great question. For whatever reason, I think a lot of these costs get basically absorbed by the IT side of things, the IT infrastructure. But I think you have to have that built into project costs. So retrospectively, it's very difficult to address, but moving forward, rather than allocate your money, or certainly within a project budget for data management services, so you don't need to buy LTOs, you don't need the hardware, and think about the footprint that I showed you. Trying to replace that. It's hundreds of thousands. So okay, you're in the cloud. It is what you make of it. They're all got cheeky ways of charging you. There's hot, cold storage, deep archive. You've got a thought, you can't do anything with it. There's varying degrees, but at cheapest it's $1 a terabyte. At worst, it's $12 a terabyte. But that adds up. So yeah, I think the client has to pay for it one way.
Okay. Anything from anyone then? Last chance.
Yeah, I have a question about the metadata. How has the definitions changed over the years? It's a great number of years, and I guess that could cause some difficulties in going back.
That's another fantastic question. Do you go back? Yeah, I think you have to be selective, both in how far you look back, because some of that information won't be there. So some of the metadata you're collecting today isn't in the data 10, 12 years ago, but how far back would you want to go? How far back should you go in practice? But yeah, it's looking forward rather than looking back to a certain extent, within reason, within the last 5-6 years. But it depends what you're trying to do. It's probably easier within a sort of commercial environment or an engineering environment. Within a survey environment, I think you have to establish first what you want to capture as the metadata.
Cool.
Okay.
Right. Thanks. Right. As an appreciation of thanks. Yeah, as a small gift almost. Take it on a hike with you. I actually think everyone's just got up and that's cool. I was going to say just do that. We've got food for about 40 people. We're only actually about half that. So please, I'll be taking it home, anything that's left over, including the wine. So do get stuck in, and maybe we should have a 5-minute.
There's not that many people at home anyway, so.
Yeah. We're going to have a 5-minute break. If there is anybody at home, just come back, have a toilet break, go and get yourself a cup of tea. We'll be back in 5 minutes.
Yeah. I was just going to say that it's very good that description with S7 there kind of lead a little bit.
Good stuff.
Oh yeah. No worries. The one in the back of the fancy truck.
We lost the connection. I think I lost it as well. It wasn't me. That was literally. I don't think you have to worry too much about that. It's not connected. Okay, so it was just me, mate.
We don't have that many people at home watching, so I think we'll just prioritise you find people. Even though the schedule has been blown, I'm not that bothered about it. It's some good food, good company. That's all that's important. Right, Greg, would you like to step up and tell us all about digital twins? Therefore, I didn't need to ask the question.
Yes.
I could have saved those 7 or 8 bullets.
Okay.
So yeah, hang on. I think we're. Go ahead. Crack on, the floor is yours.
How are we doing? We good?
We've got a little bit of the window there.
That's us. Good, thank you. Hi everyone. Greg Hammond, one of the general managers for UTech. We're part of the division that focuses a lot on dimensional control, laser scanning terrestrially. We do get involved with subsea, with high frequency sonar, subsea laser, because it kind of plays into the same arena from that point of view. And I guess through our data collection methods and mechanisms, we've developed a little bit quite heavily into kind of digital twins and the management of the data. So I think we were just commenting on the order of the presentations today, probably perfect really, from the previous one, from Subsea 7. We have obviously a discussion on digital twins, and it's just good to see how we're trying to use that data because of the same problems, the problems that we just described at the last presentation. Sensors are getting cleverer, we're gathering more data. How do we manage that data more smartly from that point of view, and how can we potentially reuse that data, not just use it for the purpose that it was originally intended? Hopefully without further ado, I'm going to move on to the next slide. Okay. Yeah, that's okay. Not changing that. Yeah, so next slide. 2 syllables. First syllable.
I told you we need a procedure.
Procedure for everything. It makes it so much easier. There we go. There we go. Most of you know who we are from that point of view. UTech is part of the Action group, so we've got a family of companies under the Action umbrella, if you will, which gives us got more diversity and access to different parts of the market, and obviously the geodata and the insights that we're part of, falls quite nicely into the future. What are we going to do to manage data going forward? The digitalization, the management, as I say, and just for those of you not familiar with the group, we're on the left-hand side in the insights column there with UTech, and we obviously play with our partner companies to try to provide a more holistic view of survey and solutions from that point of view. An agenda, hopefully won't go through too much. Why digital twins? What is digital twins? Virtual representation, it says here, of the environment. We were just speaking there before. There's different digital twins. I think maybe touching on earlier, you've got more analytical digital twins. You've got sensors and information that's coming through from everything. Everything's got a sensor on it now. You've got more and more information. If you use that information smartly, you can do predictive analysis. If you can do predictive analysis on one side of a digital twin, then you could actually predict when something's going to fail before it fails. Now, how wonderful would that be? Because the chaos of something failing is difficult to manage. If you can predict that, then you're on a winner. Digital twins, in that essence, feed into that. What we do as a business is more on what I would call a visual digital twin. And the reason for that is because of the type of data we collect. We're a survey company. We collect survey information. The survey information predominantly is visual, it's graphical, and how do we use that? And I think that the problem statements, which is really the essence of digital twins, is we've got too much data, too many different data sources. How do I make sense of that data? How do we make decisions, informed decisions on that kind of data? And the idea of a digital twin is that we're wanting to try and bring that information into one place. The information is disparate, it's everywhere. The last presentation touched on that. Everybody's got data. As an industry, we love our data. We've got it everywhere. Unfortunately, we've got it in so many different sources, and all those sources don't talk to each other. So the digital twin is trying to address that by saying, can we be a single source, a central location where information can come in, and that information can then be pulled from other systems, but you're looking at it on the one system, I guess, from that point of view. I'm not having much luck today with this presentation. Thank you. So from our side, our digital twin eyesight has been around since it's been around before 2012, but believe it or not, our first client in the digital industry, in the oil and gas industry, was 10 years ago now, before the word digital twin was even coined. And I think a point to the last presentation a little bit as well is the fact that we are a survey company, and as a survey company, as a geospatial survey company, both onshore and offshore, we gathered lots of data. Technology moved on. We started to get laser scanning and fancy three-dimensional ways that you could observe data. But what you delivered to a client at the end of the day was a GA drawing, because everybody loves a drawing. We know the deliverables remain the same. The technology that you gather becomes more advanced. And there was getting to a point where we were really leaving the valuable data on the table. We were collecting it, we were extracting what we needed, and then we were almost discarding that data. And the oil and gas industry is very typical of that. They've been using laser scanning technology to create three-dimensional point clouds for 15 years, plus 15 years. But it's only been in the last 10 years that there's been that move to say, why are we just a survey company gathering the data? Can we not be a data management company, servicing that data and reusing that data to make it more valuable? Because particular laser scanning data is very, very valuable. It isn't just there so that you can replace a spool or try a clash analysis between components. It is basically a virtual environment. It is a digital twin, but the data is huge and complicated, terabytes of data. So if you can distill that data and put it into a more easily accessible system, then rather than 2% of a company's workforce being able to access the very clever data, 100% of the business can access it. And then you're talking about health and safety, you're talking about planning, you're talking about procedures. And obviously what you're doing is the ethos, the ethos that basically 10 years ago, today, and 10 years in the future is all going to be, how can we work safer? How can we enable informed decisions? How can we reduce time? How can we drive efficiency? And how can we save money? That's what everybody wants to do. And I think that's where we can do that change, hopefully, from that point of view. So from ourselves, our solution is our own. Eyesight is developed by UTech in-house, which is quite handy from that point of view. It means that we're not providing an off-the-shelf solution that is a one-shoe-fit-all. Obviously, those solutions are useful and they clearly have the place. We found that the customization of the solution to meet more client needs is giving us the flexibility in the market. It means that everyone has the same challenges, but the challenges are unique to their business. So we kind of develop into that a little bit. And I think that the key to any of the approaches is to make it intuitive. Everything's got to be easy to use. I think Apple has probably been mentioned twice in 2 presentations now, and I think that you need the analogy of if you've got to pick it up and you can run with it and you don't need an instruction manual, then you've cracked a digital twin. I think if you need to make it complicated, people are going to disengage from that point of view. It's got to be simple, but it's got to be really powerful in the background, and I think that's the benefit of it. It's a single source of data. I think we've mentioned that today, and I'm sure that'll get repeated a few times. Everybody needs to access the solution. It's got to be cloud. You can't have a solution where one person is using it, or even a company is using it, If an operator uses a digital twin, that is to their benefit. But if they open it up to their supply chain, that benefit is 5-fold, 10-fold, because all of a sudden now you don't need to send people offshore because you can do it remotely, you can do it virtually, and then obviously there's huge cost, safety, all those implications just from that simple decision to say, could we have a virtual environment to kind of prevent that from that point of view. So I think that, you know, control is important, safety, security, access, you've got to manage that obviously, and that can easily be done. I think in some of the things and projects we've been working on, it isn't just the visual side of it, it's a workflow. You've got to consider, how do I approach something? My last slide, decommissioning. How do you work through a gated process, and how can you build a digital twin that isn't just visual, but it's also a process, and you've developed your own process and your own procedure that we were just discussing earlier, but it's gated, it's controlled. You can't do step 3 until you've done step 1 and 2. That's how things should be, because if you do step 3 before step 2, when you get to step 4, it all goes pear-shaped. It always does, but we tend to do that as an industry and try and cut corners as best we can. I think statistical reporting and the information around it is really tying into the digital twin like it is with any analysis. If you put data in, you want to analyze that data. You want to be able to get some information back out that actually gives you some prediction or illustration from that point of view. So where do we start? From our point of view, we're a survey company. We're doing laser scanning, we're doing photographic surveys, we're doing total station work, subsea, multi-beam sonars, lasers, you name it, the data's there. But the data's actually quite visual, you know what I mean? We're not total stations. Back in the day, you're picking up a single point of observation and you've got to join the dots and understand what those points make. Technology very much used still today. But technology is moving on now. You're moving from your single beam survey to multi-beam and obviously beyond and beyond and beyond. And because of that, the data is actually very graphical now. It's very visual, but the trouble is how do you manage it from that point of view? So a lot of the time we consolidate data that's already there. We don't need to go out and collect the data because people have already paid to collect the data. They're just not managing the data. So you can go in and take that data and reuse it. It's money for old rope. It's a great way of doing business if you can do that, if it's fit for purpose, if it's up to date. These are always the challenges, version control. You know, as soon as you acquire the data, someone will argue to me that it's now out of date and it's not fit for purpose, but I mean, it has so many purposes. Of course it does. And I think features of the systems, you want it to be accessible, everybody, everywhere. You want it to be interactive. When we develop a digital twin, we're not doing it for ourselves, we're doing it for our client, and our client doesn't want to look at something that's static. If it's static, then it's a PDF report. We've been doing that for years. You can turn a report into an interactive solution where people can actually go in and say, there's a problem in that area, let's drill down further, let's look at that. What happens there? Can I look at ROV value, or can I look at, sub-bottom profile from that point of view, or what's going on? You can put more information and layers of information and deliver that dynamically. Then you've got a far better product, and then you've also got differential analysis and things that we can kind of speak about. So I think that's important. Measurements, coordinates, interaction. How will this fit through the door? How many surveys have I done where a client said, I've got a piece of equipment, I don't know if it's going to fit through the door. Let's send a survey team to find out if something will fit through the door. It can be as crazy as that. It really can. And, these things get answered very quickly. And in the environments that we work in, you can't just nip round the corner and get a tape measure on it. You know what I mean? It's difficult. And that means the data that we capture is valuable, very valuable. I think geotagging and taxonomy, as I would call it, a hierarchy of how you integrate information is very key, and we can kind of come on to that a little bit. Database information, we've already spoke about that before, there's SAP, there's Maximo, there's all these things. But if you can feed that information into a solution like this, then you're putting a visual wrap onto what is a database. A database is very exciting, it's the way our world works, but it doesn't really show you what's going on. Your database could tell you that you've got 5 problems in the plant room, or you've got problems on a pipeline. But until you put that into something visual, it could be GIS obviously, or it could be something like this, then all of a sudden you realize that the problems are all in the same place. I didn't realize they're in the same place because my spreadsheet doesn't really tell me that. Now I can make a decision about, is there a fundamental reason why these are all happening in the same place, or can I be a bit smarter about how I fix the problem? Because now I can get one company to fix all the 5 problems rather than looking at lots of separate problems. So lots of benefits, I think, from that point of view. I'm here to talk about applications, really, which is probably taking me half the presentation to get around to. I'm going to be getting that soon. So I think that we do a lot of work onshore, and I'm going to breeze over these, but you know, very simple things like what we do for a lot of landfill sites that do methane power energy generation. All we're doing there is glorified reporting. We do produce a drawing, we do produce a report, and we decided years ago that there's no point emailing those to the client for them to lose them and then to ask us again, where's the report? And we've got to send it back, and then we're going into our backups and trying to find the data that they've lost. Why don't we host it for them, manage the data for them, and then they can go and find it whenever they want and retrieve the data? So that's what we did. 360 imagery is very prevalent, and it's more prevalent now than ever. Network Rail, for examples there, working at night as well. And it's all about inspection. You know, someone goes around, they inspect something, they write it down, they put it in a spreadsheet. Again, it's all about locality and position. And if you've got visual, people see it and go, oh, that's where it is. It can be as simple as that. And we work in telecommunications, the mobile towers, the towers that you see for the mobile infrastructure equipment audits. You won't believe the amount of equipment that's on these towers, and people don't actually know what equipment they have, and we laser scan them and tell them where they are and create itineraries and things like that. In the energy sector, I've got 2 here. This is top sides. There's a lot of stuff that we do because we're dimensional control laser scanning. We're above the waterline more than below it on our part of the business. As I say, we have created the digital twin really for the ethos that we mentioned earlier. You know, rich environments, easy to use, making the decisions, and then we're linking to third-party databases, so we're adding more value, and then you can add models and things like that. So, a video. I need to talk over the video, but a video nevertheless. So, GIS. So here we go. We're onshore on a refinery. We can access the data. Lovely map. We can add layers to the data. This was done for a client who wanted to visualize and plan work packs on the facility, and obviously to avoid people keep going out to that facility, we just did photogrammetry. So just really rich spherical imagery that you can walk around. It is absolutely the kind of Google Street View analogy. Why not for your assets? At the end of the day, that's the information that we're gathering in this particular instance, but it could be a byproduct of surveys gone by, and you can just take that data and reuse it. Here we are on an FPSO, laser scanning, but our system, this is the system, it was me screen recording. We use the photographic front end because it's easier. If you give someone a 3D environment, they'll just crash and lose themselves very quickly. If you can make a very simple, intuitive environment, you move around, you can see things, you can interact with those things, then people are going to use the system because they just plug and play, they know what they're doing. This, because it is laser scanning, means that we can take measurements. The survey data resides in the background. It means that it's low bandwidth. It means that it works on the platforms, it works on the vessels without pulling laser scan data down. We're using photographic front ends with laser kind of in the background. So it means we can take measurements. We're in coordinate systems. Anything that gets tagged is in a coordinate system. It has a position, it has a locality. So if you resurvey, you're not going to lose the tag. We talked about taxonomy. Here's a pump. Here's the asset information on the pump. Here's every work order that ever happened on that pump. Is it open? Is it closed? It's been pulled from SAP. It's been pulled from Maximo. Permit to works. We can even put sensor data on, if you so wish, data sheets. You can see how by adding layers of information to the data that you can get, and it's all searchable, you know exactly where you are. You can find things easily, quickly, and it's now putting a visual wrap on it. And a lot of these hotspots that you see here are to do with, you know, project planning and maintenance and shutdowns. This is downloading the data. We actually host the raw data because one of the things to close the loop is you could walk around here and say, that's wonderful, but I now need to engineer, where's the raw data? Or that's in the hard drive somewhere, isn't it? That's in backup and we've got to find it again. No, we're hosting the raw data, so you can actually pull the engineering data down and engineer from it. So if engineering companies get access to this data, which is why the operating companies want to share this with their supply chain, then their supply chain can actually engineer from getting access to the system. because all the information is stored and is accessible. We can go dynamically and we can look at the point cloud and crash into vessels and walk around things like I tend to do when I drive us around. But we can also bring in the 3D models. We could do that for clash analysis. 3D models might be intelligent models from Navisworks, PDNS, and you can have every component name under the sun in there as well if you wanted to. But it's lightweight. It isn't an Aviva or other products that are on the market that are absolutely amazing at what they do, but they're massive, millions of pounds worth of investment. This is a lightweight, a light touch solution using information that's already available. We have vessel fleets of clients because they can interact. At the end of the day, the vessels are supposed to be out in the middle of the ocean. So, if you're going to have conversations, it's great to have the virtual tour, but there's lots of byproducts to laser scanning the vessels, not just the visualization element of it, but back deck level, how level is anything, shimming things up for new reels that are going on. People ask us, I've got a new reel, I've got a 3D model for the reel. Can you put that into your data set? Because I know where it wants to go, but I think it's going to hit the crane when the crane spins around. And we've obviously got all of that data and we can kind of simulate that. So once you've done the survey and got the data, you have all the information. What you then do with that information then is all derived from how you want to extrapolate that information and put it back to people. I think part of what we're looking at on the digital twin side is obviously subsea. We operate in subsea primarily as a business, but as a digital twin, technology to manage that data is only becoming more prevalent now than it was previously. You saw there, we were looking at point cloud, but we were looking at it through Google Chrome or Microsoft Edge as it is now. We're not installing any software. You log in, everything's available to you. That's no barrier anymore. We can manage point cloud data, streaming it through the web. It's fantastic. So from a subsea point of view, this is the area and a direction that we're moving in from survey point of view, because we are a survey company, we're collecting a lot of subsea data. We're moving into renewables now beyond oil and gas, and there's lots of challenges there with regards to if we could manage that data in a smarter way and deliver that to the client base instead of just issuing a report and doing a cable or a pipeline survey, where's the defects, where are the problems, maybe we can do that more interactively. Or if we wanted to look at scour, for example, scour over time, the seabed's eroding, we want to compare survey 1 to survey 2, 6 months apart, 12 months apart. Why don't we put that data together in a user interface that the client can see, and we can see where the movement of the seabed is or the cables, and we can see the difference over time. It's okay just doing a survey 1 year and then the next year doing another survey and everybody's happy with the surveys, but wouldn't it be better if we could compare the information and make more informed decisions from the comparison? So overlaying that and overlaying different sensors, bottom profilers, unexploded ordnance surveys, we're getting all of this information, but if we could layer it so that we could see it in simple views and split screens without using very expensive GIS systems, which obviously are available clearly on the market to do this. But again, what we're about is making data accessible to the masses, not just to the people who are specially trained in a particular software. That's the key. So if we have data of a turbine, a couple of turbines over here, and we've got a cable route, you can see we're just using the mapping and geotiffs at the moment, two-dimensionally to look at the data. It's GIS. We know we can do that. Obviously, it's a more accessible GIS that we've got here. But one of our other companies within the group has sensor technology to monitor, and you want to get that monitoring information plugged into your digital twin so that you're showing the information where you went. The hotspots are events that are happening that you want to do. We've got the turbine here, and we've got the jack-up pock marks in the seabed, if you know what I mean. We're seeing that, but now we're moving from 2 dimensions to 3 dimensions. So we're now moving away from the flat 2D geotiff view into the 3D environment. And now we're able to do all of the things that we could do on the previous data set we spoke about. So we can interrogate the point cloud and the seabed data however we want. We can get our coordinates, as you can see here. We can take our measurements. How big is this? So I'm interested in what's going on here. or we can take cross sections through the data and look at how we can, as I say, what's the depth of things. Obviously, if we switch on layers from survey A to survey B, then we can do a direct side-by-side comparison to how a cross-section of data has changed over time from that point of view. We're managing data now, so we are survey companies, but I think we have a great opportunity to be data management companies, because if you control the data, you can really help your client drive informed decisions. Data is everything. It really is, from that point of view. Going on to my last slide, decommissioning, good for time?
Well, no, really, but just
decommissioning, this was just, I think this is really good. We've done a few projects like this. We've just finished one in a different one in Angola, which was more database driven. But again, the system that we have is diverse, and you need a system like that. It has to incorporate different functions. So this was what we were talking about earlier about procedures. So this is the Dunlin. So this is Fairfield Energy. The Dunlin's been decommissioned. It's going to be reverse engineered for part of it. It's going to go back in the way, coming back out the way it went back in. So it's just modules at a time. So you've got pipes joining modules, and obviously you can't lift the module if there's pipes connecting module A to module B. You've got to cut the pipes. So they had existing laser scan data. I mean, they laser scanned the bejesus out of this platform over the last 20 years. Nobody was managing the data. You know, there were just hard drives and hard drives. We took all the data, we consolidated it, so now people can make decisions onshore and offshore because they can see the data. And then we gave everybody intrinsic tablets, and they all went round and they started tagging up all of the pipes that needed cutting. But it wasn't just the tagging of it, it was all down to the procedures and the gated process. Identification, what pipe is it? What's the thickness of the pipe? What's going through the pipe? Do we need to drain it? Do we need to isolate it? Do I need scaffolding? How am I going to cut it? Am I going to do a Sengasaw? Am I going to use a clamshell cutting device? All of these things have to be captured, but it's being captured through smart technology, paperless technology offshore into a central database that is updated immediately, so people onshore know exactly what's going on, no delay. And then statistical information about progress. How far are we going? What's the complete, how complete are we in identifying this? What's the percentage? What modules have been complete? Which ones haven't been complete? Conditional formatting, but driven through the whole process. And then Herimer's going to come in and lift this thing off. So then Fairfield said, I need another certification in the database where we can almost create a tick list for Herimer to say that we've done everything we needed to sign off, to say, right, we're ready to lift this now because we've certified it. So we just developed that into the system as well, and Herimer got access to it as well as everybody else. There was about three different companies. I think the top side's ultimately coming to Norway, I think. You might correct me there. We were working in the Netherlands with Herimer, obviously the platforms in Scotland and the UK. Imagine those people flying around everywhere, having meetings and discussions, or do you just put it in one place and let everybody meet centrally? That's, I guess, what we're trying to do with digital twins. Harness data, use it smarter. If you've got any questions in Norway, speak to Odd. Thank you.
Did I go over? It doesn't matter. I thought that was, I'm exhausted actually. After that.
Me too. Need some food and wine.
I thought
now.
that was really, really interesting. I think, I don't know if anyone's got any questions, because I certainly got a couple, but feel free, because I think that's worthy of some questions, because it's just massive. Oh, we've got one over there. Jessica, go for it.
What software platform is this all built off of?
So it's primarily kind of web-based. So we're tending to use open source software where it's available. We don't reinvent the wheel if it's already out there, if you will. Software programming, HTML, PHP, Java, that type of thing. So we very much open source code the product and just deliver the development internally from that point of view. And that's important for us because we want the system to be accessible. You know, everything that's open source is far easier to develop into from that point of view. But its heritage has come from, I guess, developing into the web design and just having the smart tools kind of plugged onto it as well. Sometimes it's about joining the dots together. It's not that what we're doing here is any different than what other people are doing, but you've got to bring these 5 systems together to make the one complete system for it to be a whole, if you know what I mean. So we take the credit where we can on the stuff that we do, if you know what I mean. But we have a lot of web developers who help to make this what it is, and take systems where we can, plagiarize where we can. Why not? Yeah. So,
Any other questions? Yeah, Martin.
Martin.
Yeah, no, that's very, very interesting. Just looking at the asset management and life of field.
Yeah.
If a client has bought into service and there's a finite window in the contract, how can they walk away at the end of the contract with a digital twin? Or how can they then get someone else to move forward with that? Are they locked in to the digital twin?
Once they've left the field, or
Well, assuming your contract's not for full life of field,
yeah,
providing them with service.
yeah,
Is there anything they can harvest from it and use it themselves?
yeah. I think that's the problem in some respects to what we've had. Who owns the data and who's going to invest in running that digital twin, if you will? That's always a tricky thing from that point of view. Anything that we do and develop, if we gather data, the data's not ours, it's our clients. We've collected on their behalf. We're just creating an easy way for them to access it from that point of view. But the end data owner is a tricky one in the respect that it needs to be someone who is invested over the time, if you know what I mean, I'd say. But difficult one to answer, I guess, from that point of view. I think, but the smart things we're doing now, we do dimensional control now. We're all laser scanning structures now. When I came into dimensional control, we wanted to bring laser scanning into dimensional control. Everybody total stations is the way to go. And then the operators finally realized that when it gets wet, you can't see it again. You don't know what it looks like. What's my clash analysis? What happens when I need to do an ROV intervention? Can you remember where this is and where that is? And now everybody's laser scanning. So technology is coming towards us that way. Virtual subsea environments, for example, subsea laser scanning. We were heavily into subsea high frequency sonars, which still are prevalent if water clarity is rubbish. But now you can start thinking about being smarter. We worked with Repsol back in the day where we did a virtual metrology. We did a metrology of a new caisson that went on a platform where we insonified the position of where it was going to go and the pipeline of where it was going to connect into, but the caisson wasn't even connected to the platform. We laser scanned the caisson onshore and virtually fit it up into the jacket subsea and actually did a virtual metrology, if you know what I mean. So I think technology now is making it quite clever to bring data together and have that kind of life of field data set, but it's just where you want to take it really from that point of view. But
one small question. Greg, moving into the subsea domain, what challenges do you see with regards to? I can see that the use of eyesight tool could include bringing in data from multiple sources, multiple different companies collecting that data. So where do you see the line that you would have to draw? Your tool will allow people to measure and make decisions, and that be important for decision making. But at what stage does the QC of the data that you're bringing in? Where do you draw the line? You're going to present that data in a place. It can come from multiple sources.
Yeah.
So do you see that there might be some challenges there with regards to moving it in the subsea domain?
Yeah, I see that. Because if we're not collecting the data or validating, where the data is coming from, then there is that question mark, I guess. I think that's a really good question. Yeah, because I think that the collaboration for these softwares is a point that you kind of touch on in that question, if you will, that you can create a software solution, but UTech or Subsea 7 aren't big enough to say that I'm the only people who are going to feed that information into the data. You want to have something where things are coming from different angles, but Yeah, I mean, we've always had quality. Everything we do is all about how do you quantify the quality of what we do as a surveyors, as companies. That's always our challenge, isn't it? But you're right. I think that, I think it's an interesting one more than anything else. I think technology-wise, we can maybe marry data sets, we can do gross error checks, but I think that's going to be a challenge of the future, really. It goes back to the crap in, crap out scenario that you mentioned in your presentation. It's always going to be prevalent, isn't it? There's got to be a quality of that. Don't think I've answered the question, Ross, but I think your point's very valid. Yeah.
You can do that afterwards. I'm going to have to move along. I think it's really interesting. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I just want to say thank you.
No.
Great. There's a little token of our appreciation. So thank you very much. That was really interesting. All right, good. I think we're going to have a couple of minutes if you need to have a toilet break or something, because we're now going to make the transition to remote, where we have Kim and who do I have? Kim and Magnus, from Teletech. So we're going to try to go sort them out. We haven't thought about the sound here, so if you give me 2 minutes, quick toilet break, get a drink, and we'll be back. Okay. Give them a minute. Okay, we'll just get them all up and running, because get them on the screen. The sound Okay. Magnus, Kim, you have to unmute. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
All right. Okay, right. Can I get a little bit of order in the house, please? Excuse me. Oh, rowdy, all that free wine. Okay, right now we've got Magnus and Kim from Teletech, who will expand, I suppose, on the whole digital twin. Will give us a worked example, I suppose, of the more industrial estate, I presume, over on the east side of the country. So I think I'm going to hand over to Kim first. Is that correct, Kim? And then
Yes.
I will, hopefully, we can hear you very clearly. So I'll leave it to you. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. It seems like you're having a good time over at Bergen. That's good to hear. Next time we will join. But we're also having quite a good time here in Oslo in our office. And we're very happy to be able to have this presentation with you. I'm Kim. With me, I have Magnus, who is the project manager of this project that we want to show as a case and to kind of show our solution to viewing different kinds of data. Yeah, next slide, please. Magnus is doing the presentation and I'm doing some of the talking, then he will do a lot of the talking. And at the end, we have like a video demonstration of what to see the result. So a bit about our company. Terratech has newly merged with KVS Technologies from Stavanger. This means that we can provide the leading solutions for kind of data acquisition, data processing, data analytics, and now with this MapSpace software also data presentation. We operate and use different kinds of sensors from the unmanned aerial systems, fixed wing aerial surveying planes, rotating wing aerial surveying, mobile mapping systems, both from cars on the railroad and so on. We do a lot of indoor mapping, scanning, and ground penetrating radar, regular surveying, and of course, consulting. The company in total has about 300 employees located mostly in the Nordic countries and also some in Spain, as we see here on this map. That's the basic facts, and I will give the word to Magnus, who, as I said, is the project manager, has been and is of this project that we have done for Mo Industrial Park in Mo i Rana, North Norway.
Yes, so a bit of background. Back in 2021, Terratech and Mo Industripark started a project to establish a digital twin of their industry park. And as been mentioned on the previous presentations, that there's a multiple way of talking about the digital twin. And in this project, or in the first phase, it's more of a visual representation, the outer layer of it's Norway's largest industry park with over 2.6 area. They have a green, sustainable focus on the needs of tomorrow. Is the place where Freyr is establishing their new battery plant, which some of you might have heard about. So they manage this area, and they went in and wanting to digitize their industry park as a digital twin. They wanted to build a model over a period of 3 to 5 years, and it will be built through phases as the needs of Mo Industry are being specified. For now, phase 1 is delivered and phase 2 is ongoing. So what have we delivered in the first phase? We have delivered an outer digital twin, or the shell for a further expansion of what the digital twin might be and how to visualize it and present it. What the products we have delivered are, we have delivered a true orthophoto with a 2 centimeter pixel size, oblique imagery from air. We have a classified point cloud merged with both MMS, or mobile mapping system, and airborne LiDAR system. And all of these point clouds have been merged through the Terratech developed program, TP match, as we call it, which automatically match the data from multiple different sensors. We also published 360 Street View from the mobile mapping system. We have, based on all of this, created a level of detail 3, as we call it, a 3D model based on all of this data. The merged point cloud has been the foundation for the 3D model, which we then have textured with the airborne LiDAR data. And all of this has been published and delivered in MapSpace. It's our viewer and more of a tool for interacting with georeference data, multiple sources, and making us being able to be a one-stop shop for acquisition and publishing and delivering of georeference data. In the beginning of this project, the client has their physical facility, and in talks with them, we got an understanding of their needs. And with the plan to build the model through phases, as their needs get specified. It was important to find a suitable level of detail to begin with. And we ended up choosing a medium detail level, which would be not too low, but also not too high to begin with to reach a suitable cost level. So we chose a level of detail 0.3, just a representation here what that entails, where we have mapped all the objects that's larger than 2 square meter on the outer surface in the model. We then, based on this, we then wish to digitize their park, we chose to use the following sensor to do data capture with. We started from air. We captured the highly detailed images from our oblique cameras, taking pictures in 5 different directions, giving us a resolution around 2 to 2.3 centimeter pixel size. We also did a second flying with airborne LiDAR system, scanning approximately 50 to 60 points per line, giving us up a point cloud density of closer to 120 points per square meter from the air. From the air, you have some, you are high above, so you won't see all the details or get all the presentations of what's actually on the ground. So we also captured with our mobile mapping system to ensure full and complete coverage. So we collected the entire park with one of our systems. Here you can see the driving routes of where we have captured data. We have taken 360 images and LiDAR to ensure high point cloud coverage, also on building walls for improving the model. All of these data sets were then combined to create the end outer model of the park, which all would be published in our cloud multi-data computing viewer, MapSpace, starting to give the first initial parts of what the digital twin might be. And with the sensor and the data collected, by having everything centralized in one area, Moe Industry is then able to act on the way forwarding for forming the next step of this project. Well, where do they want to expand? How do they want to digitize their facilities? So based on it, with the sensors and the data collected, we covered everything. We then produced and published a high detailed 3D model where all the buildings are object-based. They are empty, but they are ready to be filled or with expanding through separate phases. The high detail, all of the layers that we have based the model are georeferenced together, giving Moe Industry a seamless working environment, jumping between all the different layers, and they all are in the same geolocation, all in one interface, giving you the possibility to bird's eye view, all different directions, and with the data from the air, the mobile mapping, the LiDAR sensor, the point cloud, Moe Industry is now able to use the different products to suit their needs, where one product fills the gap of another. Based on this, Mo Industry Park is acting. They see that they have a lot of data, georeference data, but they are distributed on multiple locations. As of now, their data is not centralized. It's in different departments, on different users, different software, and we are now in the phase of importing their data into MapSpace, what they already have from before, from multiple sources. We are importing all of their types of files, DVG, KML, SUSI, and more. And by centralizing their data, it gives them easy access from wherever they may be, as long as they have internet connection, which again is divided on the user's predefined access. So some of this is we received some data contours from multi-beam sensor, and in our sensor pack that Teratech and KVS are having, we have a airborne LiDAR system to do bathymetric data. And with this new bathymetric sensor, we have the capability to cover the gap between their multi-beam sonar data and their new data on land, giving a continuous model above and below versus. Might be something for phase 3. So phase 2 is now ongoing, and with the merging of Teratech and KVS, our sensor park is now even bigger, and we have now flown with an unmanned drone capturing images and LiDAR for further expansion of the model. We are also in discussion of water supply and sewage measurements, georadar for underground measurements, indoor scanning, and beam modeling. Next step in phase 3 or 4 might be, depending on the client request, to import live process data and make the model more interactive with the focus on operations and preventive maintenance. So the project has been collected multiple source data, everything published in one place, and then now we will have a short video, and Kim will go through the different possibilities in MapSpace. And so I leave the word to Kim from now.
Thank you, Magnus. So MapSpace also is an online viewer available with any computer as long as it has an internet connection, and works with every kind of what's it called? Netläser.
Browser.
Web, yeah, any kind of browser. So go. Typically, you can start in this view where we have either a map or an ortho view, as we see here. And we start zooming into the project area where we'll see that we have a highly detailed ortho that we have taken, that Magnus already talked about. And we see the differences between the standard ortho and the high detailed ortho that we have here. MapSpace will also provide some basic kind of measurement tools. For instance, the length measurements, like I show here, where you can measure the width of the road or something else. Possible to pinpoint coordinates on these manholes, for instance, and those coordinates values will come in the system, the coordinate system that has been set. You can also pinpoint heights and create like a height profile, like here. Here, of course, we use the point cloud or the DTM in the background. So this is as accurate as doing a regular survey, just a lot more efficient, which is, has been mentioned earlier tonight, one of the points with these kind of digital twins. MapSpace, of course, offers simple search solutions, and we have a toolbox where all kind of special things can be done. We have the layers that we show here, where we see what kind of layers is active in the viewer we are looking in. For instance, we have,
Sorry.
oh, whoops. That was a little jump here. Yeah. That's fine.
Sorry for that.
No problem. So here, for instance, I've loaded some manholes from within the municipality. Of course, we cannot show special data of the industry park. So, but this is the same basically. So I can select, if you can stop it now, Magnus. Here I've selected a manhole that has been registered, and we can see the different attributes. We can change them and send them back to this. This is actually a national database that we're connected to. So with the appropriate rights, we can update and keep this system, this database updated at all time. And if we are out in the field, I haven't done this in the video, then you can open this on the
what's going
mobile
on.
phone or for instance, an iPad or another portable device, and open this kind of map view or an ortho view together with these sorts of vector data. Then instead of, for instance, opening the manhole or digging a hole in the ground, you can look at the vector data, supposedly that is correct, and actually see what's underneath you, for instance. Then continue on the video. Now we've turned on where we have the street images, which is a separate layer, and I can open the street viewer, the street module, 360 module, so we can see the image itself. Now we have a setting that makes it connected to where we are in the map, so it will automatically open the center image. Of course, this is not something you have to do. It's different wishes from different users, and we can pan around in the panorama. We can also turn off this map view that we've seen the whole time and get this street view in the full screen and move between the images like this. And these images has been taken with 72 megapixels or 70, I think. We're also able to pinpoint and take out the coordinates here. And these measurements are actually done in the background in what we call the depth map, as we see here, which is basically a representation kind of the point cloud seen from the camera's location. So it gives every pixel in the image a coordinate. We can also open the 3D view and look at the point cloud synchronized to the street view, so that it will always look in the same way. So when you pan around like this, then you get to see the point cloud, and we see that here we have the classified point cloud, so it's colorized in the different classes that has been provided. And we can also turn off the street view and only have the 3D view. Then we can move around in this 3D environment, which for most users is not so intuitive as working in the image, but other users will like this, the flexibility of switching between different views. We can go into the settings of this point cloud that we have delivered and see what classes are in there. And we can turn off, for instance, the ground. Then we get a lot simpler model of just what is above the ground. And instead, we can add the ortho, which is actually draped upon the DTM. So it's kind of an ortho DTM, which in some cases would give a good representation. And if we turn off the point cloud, make it load a little bit, and turn on this digital twin itself, or everything here is a digital twin, of course, but the model view that is kind of the shell that Magnus has been talking about. We can pan around and look at all the different objects, and in the next phases that will come, we will be able to populate these objects with attributes, other information inside the surveying. And I think only when it comes to these kind of digital twins, it's only a matter of imagination on what you are able to do, and of course the amount of data. But so far we've not met any roadblocks there. So I think that's the end of the video. Short glimpse of what we have done for Mo Industripark. So if there's any questions, now is the time.
I think you have muted yourself. There we go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Right, thank you very much, gents. That was very interesting. I know you struggled a little bit there with the video, and there was a little bit of a poor connection, but I think everyone, 20 odd people, a couple of stragglers there from Deep Ocean, but all very appreciative. So has there anyone got any questions at all?
Question for all the digital twin presenters actually. Do you think there's a challenge with trust when you're talking about a final engineering decision or a final construction decision? Is there still a ways to go with regards to resisting that urge to just send a surveyor out to the site and make some very direct measurements to check what's in the digital twin before you make a final construction decision? And is that kind of actually with Stuart's presentation, is it kind of at odds with, I'm looking at that model and it looks fantastic, but if 2 or 3 total station measurements can get you the same answer, then it's actually what Stuart was talking about, is having Martin, sorry, Martin. But do you see my point? So effectively, you know.
I'll tell you what, hang on 2 seconds, right?
Yeah.
Can you actually hear what a Scottish person is saying at a distance?
It's a bit hard.
No way.
Can you come over, because I think that's a pertinent
sorry.
question. So I think I'm just going to bring in, I can't remember your name. Ross. Bring in Ross.
It's more for all the presenters, I suppose. I could have left it to the end, I suppose. But
Stand just there.
Yeah,
Turn that way. Smile.
there's a trapdoor here.
And now we see you as well.
Sorry, my question was, do you find that the model's fantastic, by the way, and the work you've done is excellent, it's really interesting to see. But do you find there's a challenge with final engineering decisions relying on the digital twin, or still feeling the need to go in and make more observations on site to make that final decision to give the go-ahead before you commit to building something or the size of something?
You're talking about QC, aren't you?
I'm talking about QC. Yeah. So the big benefit of digital twin for me, in some of these senses, is that you no longer need to send people to site. Is the big cost and environmental and health saving. But what I'm interested to know from the people that are operating and managing digital twins is, do you still feel the need, or do your clients still feel the need to go and make that final observation to say, yes, what the digital twin says is good? Is my question to all the presenters.
So Kim,
yeah, I think I understand the question. I think we cannot entirely rely on the digital twin in all cases, but for sure it will reduce the need to go out and do these surveys. But if we can exclude it entirely, I'm not sure. I don't think so. Maybe in the end, but it means that the twin has to be updated at all time. Do you have anything to add, Magnus?
Yeah, I guess that it's true what you say, and that, but say you want to prepare create something in your Freyr or making their battery factory. They won't plan it out from maybe the digital twin, but from what some of the source data that the digital twin is based upon. So from the mobile and the airborne LiDAR data, you can have the accurate measurements, and based on surveying, the model is approximately accuracy of 2 to 4 centimeters in height, and you will have within 10-15 centimeters in XY, and taking out the, for example, the ground points, having a detailed DTM, you are able to plan and produce and making their BIM models for how to construct, and then you could visualize what to come in a digital twin or in a model like this. But you will always, to some degree, need to go to location, but you can verify it through when you start going out there. So you will never, or at least not now, be able to not leave your office. I think you will have to go on site for some parts of usage of a model.
I don't think it's a bad thing. Did you, Greg?
Well, yeah, just adding to that, it's trust. It's really trust. It's like we've done this thing the same way for the last 20 years. Why change it? And I think that's the thing. I think that people have to inevitably accept that change is coming. But in the offshore environment, swapping out of spool, I can give them as accurate information as they need to on spool replacement from a laser scan, as long as I've got the right angles of the data and things like that. But will someone trust me to do that without sending someone off to do a few check measurements? It ultimately becomes trust. I think as soon as you can build up that trust that it does work this way, then you're going to have to run it in parallel with traditional systems, because you want to benchmark it. But as soon as you start benchmarking it and you start getting the more positive results to say, yeah, it does actually work that way, then I think that's when you can start moving towards more reliance on accepting that that practice is.
It's stepping out of a comfort zone, isn't it?
It
That you've
is,
had for many
it
years.
is.
And I trust that Jan Arvid will potentially talk about this from a remote perspective. What we're kind of so used to for many years is ultimately changing, and we need to embrace that rather than be afraid of it. And so, okay, gents. Well, yeah, like I say, the schedule is blown completely out of the water. I appreciate you guys staying as well. I hope you ate before you sat down 2 hours ago, because you're going to be very hungry. We've been able to drink ourselves into oblivion.
Next time.
I'd just like to say a big thank you again, Magnus and Kim, for your presence tonight. Very well received your presentation. So thank you very much. So
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much. Enjoy the evening. Bye.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Goodbye.
Okay. There's a little bit of food. There's still a little bit of wine. I just took half a bottle, so that's now gone. So I think, yeah, as Monty Python once said, now for something a little bit different. I have to say this because I've been. This gives me actually great privilege to introduce Jan Arvid. I had an interview with Jan Arvid about 18 years ago when I was working previously at Fugro. Wanted to come into GeoConsult. He interviewed me together with Arvid Pettersson. I made a complete tit of myself. I really bombed on every question they asked. The next day I got a job offer. So, you know, the direction of my life completely changed after that, and I'm eternally thankful. So on that note, I'd like to introduce Jan Arvid, and who's going to talk a little bit about Fugro's uncrewed, and I can't remember the rest of it. What is it? Uncrewed operations and developments. Could you stand here?
Yeah, you are standing with me.
Thank you very much.
I think I'll wait a bit until they have settled down.
Maybe you can help yourself to a glass.
Yeah, I can grab my. Thank you. I was a bit surprised when I saw the flyer of the evening. A special presentation by Jan Marit. It must be special because they have asked for 2 years, and at last I'm here.
It came out of left field, this one. So,
I'm going to present Fugro's uncrewed operations and what we are doing in development on that side. So sorry for one of the students that wanted to go offshore. It's over. We go So this image is from the first operation we did with the unit we called Fugro Orca. It is in Rotterdam Harbor, and we started the mission in November. So we selected the worst place ever and the worst month ever to test a completely new solution. Not test really, it was a project, commercial project for an oil company. We transited out Rotterdam, out in the English Channel, crossing the traffic zone and into the 500-meter zone of the oil rig. First project on a very new technology. We had already then performed surveys and inspection in Australia with the sister vessel. And we started that in February, I think it was, last year. So we have worked over a year with these solutions. So in principle, it works. In principle, we are capable of doing all these tasks on this illustration here. We do seabed mapping, we do pipeline inspection, we do structure inspection. The aerial drone there is a little bit exaggerated, but we are able to do that as well as if we want to do that. Taking a step back, Fugro started this transition to uncrewed operations, I think over 10 years ago, where they removed the data processors from the vessel and used robust satellite connectivity to move the data onshore and do the processing there. And from there they started, I say they because I've just been in Fugro for 2 years, they started building up the remote operation centers. And today we have 8 operation centers in operation, 3 high bandwidth, 1 in Aberdeen, 1 in Middle East, and 1 in Australia. And then the other remote operation center more for rig moves and low bandwidth requirements. And then we are building a fleet of USVs. And we are now operating 4 USVs and have 3 in build phase and 1 in commissioning. So definitely a fleet of USVs. So why are we doing this? Of course, as everybody do it today, safety. We remove the people from offshore environment and to office. We get faster access to the data. It was interesting to see this other presentation. It was a bit of flashback to old days of paper charts and so on. Today we have real-time access to the data through the satellite connectivity,
and the client can, in principle, sit in their living room watching the operation done on board. And of course, the sustainability, reducing or removing the big vessels and reducing fuel consumption drastically. And we are now working on converting to methanol and battery combinations. So going net zero emission. So from testing out different solutions of USVs and conversions, we started off some years back with a cooperation with L3 Harris, building the hydrographic solutions, what we call the Blue Shadow. It's a 9-meter USV, and it is made to be easy to move around, so we can put it into a container and mobilize it around the world. At time being, is one on the way to Europe, one is in Australia. They have been down there for a big mapping operation. So these units, they operate as a force multiplier. So they work together with the mothership. Can be lifted on board the mothership and you can go in transit to the next location. So very efficient solution when you can operate several of these in combination with a mother vessel. A short animation of this particular USV with the sensor setup and so on. Horrendous music. 19. So that's how it works and what sensors and so on are on board. Then we have another development, what we call Blue Essence, and the Blue Volta, which is the ROV system. Some of you here have been involved previously with SeaKit and AUV operations for Equinor here in Bergen. It is a SeaKit which we have partnered with, who build these vessels. It is slightly different from the SeaKit Max Limmer that was used for the pilot here in Bergen. The vessel itself is the same shape, but the internal is quite different. And we have changed the inner part with a launch recovery solution for ROV instead of AUV. And the ROV itself is developed and built by Fugu. It's specially made, of course, for inspection tasks. So this is the asset integrity solution we operate. It's a 12-meter vessel, approximately. Can operate in 2-meter HS, 2.5-meter HS. And that meaning waves size of this room here occasionally, and even bigger. So it's pretty good for a 12-meter vessel. The speed is not impressive, but it worked for the operations we are doing. A bit nerve-wracking in Rotterdam Harbor when a super tanker is coming up behind us and we have full throttle. But it worked. Payload-wise, we have, of course, the ERO, electric ROV. We are able to use AUV, change with an AUV conveyor belt. And we have a gondola underneath, which have multi-beam other sensors. These units can be operated in different modes. So we can have people on board, but it's no space really. So it's primarily for mobilization and calibration and these things. We are able to operate it from a remote joystick. So if needed, a guard vessel, for instance, can go out and take control of the vessel. How we operate it mostly is that we have a local operation center. So, for instance, when we was in Rotterdam, we had the container which you see there with a full operation console and so on, and we do the day shift in the container and the night shift in the remote operation center. Then you have people that can do maintenance and fueling and so on locally. But if you do it out of Aberdeen, of course, then we just have the remote operation center in operation. And these units are made for doing over horizon operation, so out of line of sight. So then I have a similar animation here with show how this USV are operated and what sensors are on board. So then we move on to the next level. We are now in the phase of building 18-meter USV, of course with a larger ROV as well. So the blue AMP ROV is half time the size, bigger than the blue Volta on the 12-meter. It's made to be able to meet, for instance, the Equinor pipeline inspection requirements. It is, of course, operating on a longer endurance, so can be out for 20 days doing full ROV operations, plus transit forth and back. Slightly higher speed and slightly higher HS, 3 meter is calculated HS operations. As of course, hull-mounted sensors, potential towed sensors, as well as you can change the ROV system for potentially AUV systems. Underneath, you have quite a large gondola. This is just a concept, but we have 3 different gondola designs. So we can use dual EM2040, for instance, or EM304 for deeper water surveys. Also installed with the Innomar medium system, and we are working on one version of this that you have taken off the stern part and replaced with winches. So we are able to tow up to 3 tow at the same time, which is pretty amazing from an 18-meter vessel. So that lead me to kind of the future vision of Fugro, where we are going over the next years. We are aiming to be a net zero emission company by 2035. Today we operate 30-35 vessels, so it's quite ambitious to remove all emission. We are operating large IRM vessels and so on. Of course, that will be a challenge to work with, but that's at least the goal for the company, that we shall be zero emission by 2035. So that was the last slide. Any questions?
There will be many. Thank you. Maybe I can kick it off because I'm the chair. So, as a student, as you guys, we've got a few students here tonight. I can't see how you cannot find that stuff impressive, and how you would not want to get involved in stuff like that. So, thank you very much for.
You want to work offshore?
Onshore, offshore, it doesn't make any difference. I find it very interesting what all this. My question to you really is how much resistance or how much work is actually required talking to the client about what you're trying to do here, because this is game changing compared to where we've been and where we're going to, and a lot of the clients that we talk to are maybe not so savvy about the future. So how much this is kind of, even for people who've been in the industry, this is kind of almost a little bit difficult to kind of take on board. So how much effort is required now to sell this to the client, or are they just kind of let's go, whatever? Is it?
What we did, some of people here worked in Svai Seabed. We went to one of the biggest clients in Stavanger and said no cure, no pay. And then of course, go ahead. But the tone had changed a bit. Everybody wants this, or at least many want it. But when you come there and say that this is very advanced technology, it's very costly to build. It's not half price. It's come on. So they want it for free, more or less. They believe when you have an uncrewed vessels, then it's no people involved, but you have just moved the people on shore. of course, you have removed some of the marine personnel, but in reality, it's quite demanding. So it's a process. You have clients that are really eager, like down in Australia, they have very good cooperation with the clients there, and they are eager to push this. You have clients in Europe as well that are really eager. So I think that will develop over time, but it is still that idea that an uncrewed vessel is free of charge. It is no people involved, so.
Don't worry, you still need to, it's just the bum has just been moved from offshore to onshore.
Yeah.
So they still need to go offshore, in my opinion, so will be.
For many years.
For a while.
Yeah.
Certainly for the next couple of years. Does anyone else have any questions? There must be, yeah. Of course, Al.
Yeah.
So, question: When are you going to let the dog off the lead? Let the ROV go untethered, and what's basically stopping you going down that direction at the moment? Is it the ability to recharge batteries, launch and recovery? Are you considering hybrid AUVs, small vehicles?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes to all. We are on the ROV side. Yeah, of course, we look at how to remove the umbilical over time, but development takes time. At last, Kongsberg have developed a multi-dive AUV, which we in Seabed we require that, and now they have managed to engineer that, so that will come. It's a question of a business case. You need to do what you think is giving enough money back. So I believe in AUVs from this. But the AUV business is up and down, so it's difficult to say. So maybe a hybrid solution is a good way of going.
I think I asked this question of Mike King from Ocean Infinity, but what are the legislation, and you got your guys sitting in a container or whatever, maybe even at home trying to manage this, but sending something that's unmanned over the horizon to do various activities. Are you working with the authorities to because they won't have a clue what's going on, and you've got to kind of give them and help them and guide them where they've got to go. Are you working with the authorities to allow that, the use of unmanned vehicles offshore?
Yeah, we have a team working on that, and it's a long road. We have worked for several years now. Of course, IMO, the International Maritime Organization, they have a window of maybe 10 years before they have the guideline ready. MCA in UK, they all have their processes. Norway is maybe a more easy place to go through because they have established a form of guideline 5 years ago at least. So for vessels of this size, it's possible in Norway and Netherlands, Belgium, and so on, because they take it case by case. Bit slower process in UK maybe, but it moving in that direction. UK MCA came out with a new guideline a couple of weeks ago. So and it's working groups in IMO and so on that work on autonomous vessels. So I believe it's going to happen over the next years that for at least USVs it will be regulations in place. But at time being, it's just guidelines and recommendations.
Does that mean that currently you can only operate within line of sight?
Yeah, in UK you need a guard vessel. So
Yeah, it's the double up on boats.
yeah, it's ridiculous. Yeah.
I know the aerial. I mean, aerial drones. I'm saying you can't operate into military line of sight. So it will come. It's like you said.
The other way to do it is that you have a vessel on call as a mitigation. But time being, it's very strict. It's difficult to see how fast it will develop.
Are all your USVs battery driven or Tesla motors inside?
Hybrid.
Yeah.
So diesel and battery.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Yay. The floodgates open. Yeah. Håvard.
Yeah. So communicating over VSAT or 4G or 5G or whatever, there will be some sort of time lag. And what's the, I guess, especially when it comes down to inspection and all the, what's your experience and how do you cope with that?
Yeah, it's a time lag of maybe a second, depending. We have built in more autonomy into the RV. So that's the way we go to avoid problems in that respect. And that's a continuous development, but at time being we are able to use quite a lot of autonomy into it.
Martin.
Yes, similar question, but can you enter 500 meter zones? Can you? Is it acceptable for the?
We got acceptance. We have got acceptance for the project we did in outside Rotterdam, but it's case by case. We have done inside 500 meter zone in Australia as well. It's a practical discussion, of course. It is quite a good station keeping capability. So I think this 12 meter has, if I recall correct, approximately 6 meter circle you keep stationary, and the 18 meter will be better in that respect. But it's not DP, but you have redundancy.
And that was the next question. I guess you've answered it. That would be the redundancy. Excuse me, if you lose comms for whatever reason, it just holds station until the comms come back. You know?
Correct. Yeah. But in inside 500 meter zone, of course, you plan it as a drift off solution. You have the wind and current in your favor.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to ask a very sensitive question, but there's a lot of money being invested in this. So a return on investment from, I mean, is that projected to be within the next 10 years with an option? Maybe you can't even answer it, but it's, Fugro have obviously put a lot of time, resources and money into something that they believe in. And currently, I'd say the industry is probably not taking this on board the way that they will. They will eventually, but is that something you can divulge? I mean, are we talking 10 to 15 years down the line where you think...
the lifetime of this vessel is 7 years.
7 years?
Yeah, so return of investment is faster.
Okay.
And Fugro don't go into a business which is negative in that respect. Of course, you don't know what the market is in 2 years' time, but it's a strategy. We go uncrewed and are building many of these.
Yeah. Judging how busy we all are at the moment, I suspect this isn't far around the corner. So.
Yeah, but this is Fugros. Then you have Ocean Infinity. Then you have Axe Ocean. Then you have the company Houston came out of Houston Mechatronics, Nauticus or something. They had a press release building at least 20 USVs with large this Houston Mechatronic RV AV. So it's a lot of focus on this. And then you have UC and Sulmara, everybody focus on uncrewed operations. So it's just the legislation that keep holding back.
Right. Any other questions?
Yeah, you quote sort of operational limits there. Realistically, for a relatively small platform, what sea state can you operate in and still, collect decent data?
With the 12 meter, we operated in sea state 4. 2.5 meter, we did launch recovery. And we did seabed mapping. I shall not state what wave height, I can't say really, but in that operation we mapped the area with a hull mounted multi-beam and made data according to IHO, and the highest grade. So up to 2.5 meter for a 12 meter vessel is pretty good.
And you would see this operating a long distance offshore.
For sure, but it's a limited endurance. So in practical use, I would recommend to be within 60 nautical miles, maybe. But for a short mission, you could work far off. It is approximately 2 weeks operation time. So and with slow transit speed, then it's depending how far it is.
So would you be looking at having a mothership stationed in, an offshore wind farm that may be 100 kilometers offshore, and then, sending these out? Is that something?
We're working on other development, which is called RoboDock. It's been in media. That's a docking station for USVs that you can place out in an offshore field. Or, as you mentioned, using a mothership that you can fuel it from and potentially lift it on board.
Okay, any more? Okay, good. Jon, thank you very much. Always a pleasure. It was very interesting. Thank you very much. Okay. Right, that's it. We've gone well over. I suppose I should try and bookend this. I thought there were really interesting presentations tonight. I'd like to thank everyone for turning up. We only have 3 people at home, so I'm not going to really play a little bit of lip service to them, but it was really good, really interesting. I think the surroundings are great. The food's been great. The company's been great. I'd like to see that. I'm really pleased to see some students here. How can you not find some of that stuff interesting? So I know you're not dedicated, maybe living and breathing this as we are, but maybe in a few years' time, we'll see you guys getting involved in some of this stuff, because we're all getting on a bit now, and we need some new fresh blood into the industry. So I think on that note, I'll say thank you very much to the 3 people at home. I bet they're not here. There's no one awake there. But I think we'll just continue here. We've got this place until a little while longer, but hopefully we'll see a few of you down in Stavanger in about 6 weeks' time. But thank you very much for your attendance. Thank you. All right. That's sufficient.